For 73 long cycles, the chair labeled Terran Delegate remained conspicuously empty. Think about that for a moment. 73 galactic years. Every single session of the esteemed Galactic Council would kick off with the same tired, predictable joke. Perhaps the humans are still evolving thumbs. A ripple of self-satisfied laughter would invariably sweep through the grand, domed hall. Because, let's be honest, laughter comes cheap when you're convinced a species has simply ghosted you out of sheer cowardice. Or maybe just incompetence. They thought humanity was a cosmic no-show, a footnote in the grand ledger of galactic affairs. But oh, how wrong they were. That well-worn joke? It was about to miss its punchline in the most spectacular, terrifying way imaginable. Then, without so much as a polite hello, a single stark transmission punched through every shielded channel, every secure frequency, above the very council station itself. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't an apology. It was a declaration, cold and absolute, debt due, payable now. And just as those words hung in the stunned silence, 1,000 human warships, a veritable armada of retribution, blinked into existence from hyperspace. Their hulls, impossibly black, seemed to drink the starlight, absorbing it rather than reflecting it. Rail arrays, massive and menacing, were already humming with barely contained power. No pleasantries, no humble apologies for skipping every prior meeting, every summons, every demand for explanation. Just a promise. A promise carved in pure, unadulterated firepower, delivered with chilling precision. 15 cycles. That's how long it had been. 15 galactic cycles ago, the Council had watched, with what they considered detached neutrality, as humanity lost 40 million souls. 40 million lives, extinguished in a brutal, calculated assault. They saw the reports. Salted farms, once fertile and green, now barren and poisoned. Rivers, once teeming with life, choked with heavy metals. Children, terrified and innocent, dying in evacuation corridors, their small bodies piled amidst the chaos. And the attackers? An alliance of 3 core worlds, the Xelithans, the Vraxi, and the Kthar, who, with breathtaking audacity, claimed it was merely a border correction. A slight adjustment. Humanity, reeling, filed a formal protest, a plea for intervention, for justice. When none came, Earth simply vanished. No envoys, no trade ships, no answers to the increasingly frantic, then increasingly indignant, summons from the Council. The prevailing assumption, whispered in hushed tones across the galactic arm, was that humanity had crawled back to its home world, tail between its legs, to lick its wounds in quiet shame. They never bothered to look closer. They never noticed the colossal shipyards, silently blooming like deadly flowers in orbit around Luna. They didn't see the conscription bills, quietly, meticulously, passing through every Terran government. They certainly didn't register the quiet, almost imperceptible repeal of every single arms limitation treaty humanity had ever signed. Silence, you see, is incredibly easy to misread, especially when you're too busy congratulating yourselves on your own perceived superiority, on your own galactic order, to pay attention to the quiet hum of an approaching storm. Without humanity, that delicate, intricate galactic balance began to tilt, then wobble, then outright collapse. It was almost immediate. Piracy, once a manageable nuisance, doubled. Border skirmishes, previously contained to minor disputes, flared into localized conflicts. And the Council? They tried to compensate, of course. Reconstruction taxes, heavy and burdensome, landed squarely on every member species, fueling resentment. The Council minutes, once filled with proclamations of peace and prosperity, began to read like a litany of complaints. Terrans owe reparations for non-participation. Terrans abandoned allies. Terrans are unreliable. Each accusation felt incredibly safe, didn't it? No human voice rose in protest. No human diplomat stood to refute the charges. But deep down, in the quiet, calculating corners of their alien minds, some delegates worried. A variable subtracted from every strategic equation leaves a vacuum. And that vacuum, left unfilled, hums. It hums louder and louder with each passing cycle. That hum, eventually, turned into a relentless, unsettling drumbeat. Scouts, brave or foolish enough to venture into the fringes of the Orion Arm, began reporting Ghost Fleet signatures. 1,000-meter hulls, massive and silent, with no transponders, vanishing the very moment they were pinged. Like phantoms, the reports, naturally, were buried. Panic, after all, is just terribly bad for quarterly trade reports, isn't it? Better to pretend, better to ignore. Until you can't anymore. It was the current cycle, an emergency session, naturally. The agenda, as per usual these days, revolved around the increasingly dire question of how to split defense responsibilities after the latest, particularly brutal raid on a minor trade hub. A Vraxi delegate, ever the paragon of galactic bureaucracy, raised a claw to suggest, yet again, that humanity be officially sanctioned for continuous absence and dereliction of duty. The words were barely out of his mouth when the lights in the Grand Council chamber dimmed, not slowly, but suddenly, violently. Every screen in the hall, every holographic display, bled a stark, terrifying crimson. And then there they were, 1,000 human capital ships. Not an exaggeration, not a rumor, but a cold, hard fact. They slid into synchronous orbit above the Council station, their sheer number blocking out distant stars. Their shields, layered and overlapping like the scales of some ancient, mythical beast, pulsed with barely contained energy. Spinal guns, colossal and undeniable, were angled with surgical precision directly at the Council's fragile, glass dome. No warning shots, no negotiation loops, no pleasantries, just a voice colder, more devoid of emotion than the interstellar vacuum itself, echoed through the chamber. 40 million. 1 hour. In the absolute vacuum of space, they say no one can hear you gulp. But inside that chamber, amidst the sudden, suffocating silence, the sound of 1,000 alien throats swallowing hard was deafening. The Council fleets, what was left of them, scrambled. A chaotic, desperate flurry of activity. Local defense grids, once thought impenetrable, peaked at a pathetic 32% charge before human jammers, deployed with chilling efficiency, hissed them into utter, complete silence. Utterly helpless, the delegate who had ordered the original massacre, a once proud, now silver-cloaked Zealothan, stood trembling, his composure shattered, while every single camera feed in the galaxy, broadcast live, framed his terrified silhouette. A public shaming, centuries in the making. And then the true horror, the true message began to unfold. Earth's flagship, a behemoth named Vengeance, opened a single hangar bay. It was just large enough, impossibly large, to swallow a city block of shuttles. From these shuttles, a quiet procession began. Refugee children, the very same children, now young adults, saved 15 cycles earlier from the poisoned rivers and salted farms. They walked onto the Council floor, not with anger, but with a quiet, devastating dignity. Each one, in turn, handed every single delegate a data shard. Names. Holos. The last desperate words of the murdered. 40 million faces. 40 million stories. They flickered across every seatback display. A silent, relentless accusation. The abstract numbers, the distant tragedy, had become terrifyingly, intimately real. Debt collection had officially begun. And as the Council members stared at those faces, they understood. Paperwork, when it's filled with the weight of 40 million souls, can be heavier than any shell. Sanctions. Reparations. A formal, groveling apology. Those were the Council's opening offers. They tried, bless their bureaucratic hearts, to negotiate. Humanity predictably declined. With a curt, dismissive wave of a hand, the Terran representative, a woman whose gaze seemed to pierce through centuries of galactic arrogance, rejected them all. Instead, they unfurled a contract, not on flimsy data pads, but etched with chilling permanence into obsidian tablets, ancient and unyielding. The terms were simple, brutal, and non-negotiable. Every aggressor world, every single one responsible for the atrocity 15 cycles ago, would surrender orbital industry equal to the exact mass of Terra's lost colonies. Think about that for a moment. Not a percentage, not a token offering, but an equivalent. Refusal? Refusal meant the 1,000 ships, still hanging like silent judgment in orbit, would visit planetside. No long-winded speeches about justice. No moral grandstanding. No eloquent pleas for understanding. Just arithmetic. Cold, hard, undeniable arithmetic. Arithmetic older than stars themselves. The Zealothan Alliance, pale and defeated, signed within 30 minutes. Across the chamber, the Vraxi, their bravado utterly evaporated, whispered amongst themselves, their alien faces etched with dawning horror. Maybe we should have checked the chair was truly empty. Too late. Far, far too late. The humans were already wheeling the obsidian tablets away, their boots clicking on the polished marble floor like metronomes, ticking down the future interest owed on arrogance. Humanity hasn't attended another council meeting since. Not one. The chair remains, of course, a permanent, chilling reminder. But now, every single session begins differently. It starts with a collective, involuntary glance toward the sky, a quiet, internal roll call of dread that echoes through the grand hall. Because 40 million ledgers balanced, 40 million lives accounted for, means absolutely nothing if you forget the interest. The astronomical, compounding interest owed on arrogance, on indifference, on the assumption that silence meant submission. And somewhere, in the dark, silent shipyards orbiting a quiet blue world, a world that once suffered in silence, a second thousand keels are already being laid. Just in case the galaxy needs another reminder. If this bleak little slice of vengeance felt good, if it gave you that satisfying chill, then go ahead and sling the video a like. And hey, why not ride the bell for more HFY fire? I'm signing off until the next time the galaxy forgets to read the fine print.